The suspects of the incident that took place in Gumbo Shirkat, which left 6 people dead and 8 injured, on 3rd of June 2020 were brought to justice under ongoing investigation by the committee. This came during the updates by the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs to the public on the previous Shirkat incidents, which caused loss of lives of civilians and damages of their properties. The incident was a result of land dispute between two groups.
We feel like this is an important occasion. Is coming to perform in the premises of this ministry. And it's about launching for public information the report on the investigation of the incident of the 3rd of June 2020 that happened in Shirkat. So the office of the president has decided that this document be made public, and that's why the Honorable Minister is here to make it public.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Presidential Affairs, Nhial Deng Nhial, said the committee will continue to investigate the incident and brought the criminal to law. He added that the government is ready to support the investigative committee in order for civilians to get justice.
The decision to make the report on the investigation into the unfortunate incident that occurred in Gumbo Shirkat on the 3rd of June. It has been decided by His Excellency the President, who formed by an order the committee to investigate on the incident, that the findings of the report should be made public. That decision was taken by His Excellency on the recommendation of the investigation committee that was ably led by His Excellency the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. We thought that it's important to make public the findings of the investigation in the interests of justice and in the interest of transparency. As we all know, as the saying goes, it's not only important to do justice, but it's also important for justice to be seen being done. And so in the interest of justice and in the interest of transparency and the need to close the door to any unnecessary and unhealthy speculation, it has been decided that the findings of this investigation should be placed in the hands of the public. Acting in pursuance of Republican Order number 15/2020, issued by the President of the Republic on June 4th, 2020, establishing a committee under the chairmanship of Honorable Justice Ruben Mado Larol, Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, to investigate the unfortunate incident that resulted into loss of life and destruction of property at Shirkat on the 3rd of June 2020. The committee duly undertook its work and completed its task on July the 14th, 2020, and then rendered its final report on the 15th of July 2020. Originally, the committee was given 7 days within which to finish its work. However, the time allotted proved to be insufficient, and the committee requested an extension of time, which was duly given by His Excellency for a further 7 days. Initially, the committee comprised 7 members, but it was later thought it would be better to expand the committee, and that was done through the co-opting of 5 additional members in order to achieve greater inclusivity and also to enhance its national character. The facts of the incident are very clear. The incident was actually sparked off by a dispute over land between somebody called Ajib Yor, a civilian, and Lieutenant Colonel Luala Kogwol, who also known as Lual Marine, a military intelligence officer of the South Sudan People's Defense Forces. Ajib Yor had obtained a sublease of a plot of land within the compound of Bor Bus Station, commonly referred to as Bor Bus Park. On this plot, he erected a commercial public toilet. And Bor Bus Park itself sits on a plot of land which is owned and registered in the name of Mr. David Gore Faustino of Tokiman East Payam. Lieutenant Colonel Lualakok, now deceased, subsequently erected 2 rows of iron sheet shops next to Ajit Jok's existing public toilet. The fence that Lieutenant Colonel Lualakok constructed around his shops was extended to enclose part of the public toilet's driveway, reserved for sewage tanker trucks to occasionally empty the septic pit. And this practically made the toilet that was erected by Ajit Jok unusable, and so it basically brought his business to a halt. Consequently, Ajit Jok lodged a complaint against Lieutenant Colonel Lualakok's actions with the local authority, which upon inspection of the site determined that Lualakok's ongoing unauthorized construction should cease and that part of the fence already put up should be demolished. However, this decision was not implemented. On June the 2nd, an altercation occurred between Lieutenant Colonel Lualakok and Ajit Jok when Lieutenant Colonel Lualakok found the latter, that is Ajit Jok, with some people engaged in pulling down the shops and the fence surrounding them. Lieutenant Colonel Lualakok then proceeded to report the matter to the police, and indeed an arrest warrant for 3 individuals, including Ajit Jok, was issued. These warrants could not be executed because it was already evening by the time they were issued. On the following day, on June the 3rd, Lieutenant Lualakok, accompanied by 6 of his bodyguards, they went to the site of the disputed plot of land in Gumbo Shirkat. There were indications that some sort of understanding had been reached to hold a meeting between Lieutenant Colonel Lualakok and Ajit Jok to amicably resolve their dispute. But what actually transpired is that upon arrival, Lieutenant Colonel Lualakok found a large crowd of people armed with the sticks and hammers, busy dismantling his property, just as had happened the previous day. When he attempted to stop the action, he was attacked and hit on the forehead and the back of his head with a steel bar and hammer respectively. He then fell down unconscious, and of course, as we know, he subsequently succumbed to his injuries later that evening. Upon seeing Lieutenant Colonel Lualakok collapse, his bodyguards panicked and opened fire randomly. The incident claimed the lives of 6 persons, of course including Lieutenant Colonel Lualakok himself. 8 others were injured, and following this episode, there were sporadic demonstrations which broke out, and part of the rowdy mob chanted anti-government slogans. They also looted and razed down the house of Lieutenant Colonel Lualakok. They also destroyed government vehicles, obstructed traffic, and generally they vandalized both public and private property in the vicinity. Now, these were the findings of the committee in light of the facts that have just been narrated. According to the committee, the incident was the consequence of a dispute over a piece of land contested by 2 parties, one a military officer and the other a civilian. The civilian who operated the commercial public toilet, that is Ajit Jok, apparently had a valid legal claim to the plot of land in dispute. Notwithstanding that the land dispute had been brought to the attention of the authorities as a potential flashpoint for violent conflict, no effective action that could have forestalled the conflict that eventually ensued was taken. Third, the dispute was aggravated by community sentiments of sympathy on both sides of the community divide, from which the 2 individuals, Ajit Jok and Lual Marine, come from. The slogans that were displayed and chanted, denouncing the government during the protest and attacks on public installations and assets, indicate that there were elements that wanted to politicize the incident. Land issues are being settled by some South Sudan People's Defense Force officers acting as community chiefs, instead of leaving the resolution of such matters to the leadership of the indigenous communities of those areas. Rajaf County, the transporters at the Rajaf County, as well as the transporters at Bor Bus Park and the family of the late Lieutenant Colonel Lualako all claim to have incurred huge financial losses as a result of the incident and its aftermath. The value of these claimed losses range from between $5,000 to $1.8 million. The committee found no evidence of a group pre-plan or conspiracy to attack Lieutenant Colonel Lualako, nor did it find any indication that the shooting that erupted after Lieutenant Colonel Lualako had been hit was in any way premeditated. The committee then proceeded to make the following recommendations, which have been adopted by the leadership. First, in light of the foregoing facts and findings, the committee has made, among other things, the following key recommendations as the way forward in dealing with the incident. All suspects that have a case to answer are to be expeditiously tried in an open civilian rather than military court, and preferably in Shirkat. 2, those charged with bailable offenses are to be released pending their trials. 3, relevant authorities, in collaboration with local communities, to develop mechanisms to ensure access to land for settlement in an equitable manner. 4, the judiciary to expedite the resolution of land cases and the relevant authorities to execute such decisions accordingly. 5, the government to direct the Peace Commission to organize a community dialogue, particularly in Shirkat, and organize a national land conference to review the policies and laws governing land matters. 6, the government to issue strict instructions to the military and other organized forces to stop their personnel from acting as chiefs and involving themselves in local government administration. Finally, as we have done today, the contents of this report have been made public.
Addressing the media, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Justice Ruben Madol Arol, said the accused of the incident are under custody for ongoing investigation. About 25 people were involved in the incident, including armies and civilians, he stated. He further urged the government to address land issues to avoid intercommunal conflict in South Sudan.
These land issues are dangerous if they are mishandled, and everybody has to be made aware of the risks involved in dealing with land issues superficially and outside the law. That's an issue of awareness. 2, empowerment of the communities in line with the legal processes to be able, to manage the land in a way that suits everybody's interests in the locality. It's like you don't need to own the land and say, okay, I own the land and I don't want anybody to develop this land. And I'm not going to abide by the rules placed by the government in disposing of the land. Now here you are contributing into a problem. Maybe you are making the problem for yourself, okay? That issue of empowerment of the community, because already there's the concept that the land belongs to the community. It was meant to make things easier for the community and the related people within the community to share land equitably. It was not meant to be used for negative purposes, all right? But then the law has to empower these community people to organize ways of dealing with land in an equitable manner. Third, accountability where wrong has been done. There are many ways of accountability. One of them is this criminal process. The other thing you could use is administrative censure. You could use so many avenues within the law, all right, for those who violate the due process of administering land according to the legal regulations. Let me just start by your last question. Yes, there's a land law in the country, and it is the Land Act 2009, is it? Yeah, that is the law that regulates the usage of land in the country. Two, yes, damages as part of the terms of reference for the committee was to establish how much damage had been done to public as well as private property. And we have figures here, like he mentioned before, ranging from 5,000 to
1.8.
1 point. Yes. Now, what's the purpose of establishing that fact about the damaged properties? It's with the idea of compensating the victims of damage. And this can only be done through the legal process. And that's what is going to be done. Well, that is why there is the recommendation to have the process of criminal accountability done through the normal courts of law. And that's what they are going to do. It is the court of law that will determine the criminal penalty that's going to give, and also the part relating to the private rights of the victims and the interests of their relatives. It's not the committee, because of the slogans that were raised. There were slogans that said, down, down with the government. If you say down, down with the government, is that not a political statement? That's definitely a political statement aimed at the government. That's what we are indicating here.
On the report speaks about elements.
Right.
It doesn't speak about everybody.
والحادث الأخير الحصل is being investigated now. And as far as we know, there's nothing that has come up to suggest that it was related to the first incident for Shirkat. We don't have any reason to think so, unless that one comes up through the investigation. برا من الملحوظات بين اللجنة على إنه كان في علامات رفعوها في المظاهرات عند صبغة سياسية. اللجنة كان ما مكلف عشان يمشي يفتش ورا الحادث ده، في كان ناس منو بوراه وكده. فليه حسا ما عندنا حاجة اللي بيشير لنا على إنه فعلا في evidence إنه X or Y as politicians were the ones pushing this way or that way. If it is there, we are not aware of it. One, let me say that land disputes are rampant, but they vary from situation to situation. We dispute between a neighbor and neighbor over a small piece of land, al-hudud bin Dawudak. There are issues of land being contested by groups against the other groups. There are issues of land, al-Gabugu, Lugal Nyakamu. All right? All these are various degrees of land, and much more than that. All right? For our purposes here, we know that one, there are provisions in the Constitution that relate to how to handle land issues and what land is all about. And then there is this Land Act, okay? Now, how to implement the Land Act, okay, might require some regulations, okay? Those ones could be the responsibility of a number of people, all right? But then, there's no one body in the whole system of government that is said to, be responsible for all land issues, from land registration to people fighting over land. People fighting over land, الشغل بتاع تحقيق جنائي بمشي للمحاكم ويلقى علاج هناك. Registration of land ما بيدخل البوليس. Okay, it's something that's done through a system of land registry, through the land distribution or allocation offices in the ministry at the level of the nation as well as at the state level and within the local government. All right. Now, it depends on what complaints are coming and from where and from who. You see. So much so that you are not going to find one full record of all the land disputes in the country under one roof. We don't have that. Well, the fact of the matter is the law can apply in situations across the board to everyone. If you look at the definition of what is murder, okay, you will find it defined in the SPLA Military Act that's applicable to military situations within the military. But again, the same definition is what you get before the civil courts. The same definition is what you will get before other specialized tribunals. Now the issue will be like, okay, if you have a situation where an organized, a member of an organized force has committed a crime against a civilian, the best way to make everybody understand that justice is being done, like he said before, not being done, being seen to be done, is to have the trial before a civilian court in an open setting. That's what we mean here, because these are issues affecting and impacting on the people generally. Shouldn't be tried in a military court, which is meant for the soldiers and in their own environment. You see the difference? عايز أقول لك على إنه أنا في وقت التحقيق لقينا 25 ناس قبضوهم بخصوص الحادث اللي حصل هناك، كويس؟ وعددية ده من ضمنهم عساكر ومن ضمنهم civilians. Okay? And بعد ما انتهينا من الريبورت حصل some arrests that were made which are not covered in this report, all right? But then there is an ongoing criminal investigation that was being done by the police. The details of who is under arrest up to now, who had been arrested and might have been released on bail, and what happens is going to be traced through the records of the criminal investigation, not through this report.
Reporting for Dolku Media, I am Jennifer James in Juba.